Today is Faith Promise Sunday, and today the title is Beautiful Feet. Beautiful feet. How many of you are proud of the way your feet look? How many think you have beautiful feet? This person has pretty nice feet. If you saw my feet, we usually don't give too much thought about our feet. They do a lot of work. Our feet just do a lot of work for us. And we typically don't think too much about our feet until we've been on them for 8 hours and like, ooh, my feet hurt. Or when something goes wrong, say you have a wart on the bottom of your foot or you have a bunion on the bottom of your foot. And I don't think too much about my feet until it hurts to walk or hurts to run. And if you were to look at my right foot, I'm not going to take off my shoe and show you my right foot, but my right foot has been banged up over the years. Matter of fact, when I was in high school, I was working for a turkey farm, and not only we hatched the chickens, we raised the chickens, we killed the chickens, and we processed them. And my job in high school in the fall would to be working at the processing plant. And I was in the packing area where they'd already been vacuum sealed, they'd already been packaged, and they would put them in boxes so that they could put them either in the freezer or in the chiller. And so we typically had 4 piles of pallets of boxes, and we'd stack them on there the way they would need to be stacked on. And typically, as the pallet would get full, we'd slide in a pallet on its edge so that when the forklift driver came and pulled it back, we'd just put it down. Well, one of those times, it was really busy, and I put my foot where it should have been, and I have never been much of a steel-tip person. Sunday is about the only day that I wear dress shoes. I typically have on sneakers. Well, I had sneakers on, and down came the pallet onto my right foot, especially onto this toe. And even today, I had to go to the emergency room. Even to this day, when I try to cut my toenails, I always have to do some finagling because that toenail has never quite ever grown back right. And then there's another one, same foot. The toenail kind of grows at a weird kind of angle, and so my feet aren't real beautiful. But I was really encouraged a couple weeks. About a year ago, I had to go to the podiatrist because I had the gout. And she was looking at my feet after the gout was all taken care of. She goes, "These things on the bottom of your feet, do those hurt?" I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "They really annoy me when I'm running." So she goes, "Well, we can take care of that." She says, "They're not bad." And this was really cool because she said, "I can tell that you have good running form because of where these things are appearing on your foot." She goes, "You have a," and I'm like, "Well," I said, "it's pretty natural. So I just started running." And that's. She goes, "Well, she goes, "Good for you." She goes, "You haven't had many injuries in your running career." I'm like, "No," because I have my friend Jason Clayton, who pastors over at Peace Wesleyan in Falconer. That boy is always injured, and so he's always injured doing running. And I thank God that He gave me a nice running form that I can enjoy running. So today we do want to talk about feet, and we want to talk about the feet that share the gospel. Those are the most beautiful feet. Now you may have heard of Global Partners. You may wonder, well, what is Global Partners? And they are the missions department of the Wesleyan Church. But here's their mission statement. Every local church has a mission to reach their here, the near, and far, and hard places in the world. Global Partners gives global focus to the mission of the Wesleyan Church with the express purpose of seeing Acts 1:8, we'll get to that in just a moment, we'll come back to that, become your reality. We partner with you to develop a comprehensive mission plan to see the lost reached, leaders developed, and churches reproduced. Together, we are amplifying local church mission for global transformation. So just to give you a little bit more idea of Global Partners, here's a video. after Jesus rose from the grave, he met with his disciples and he gave them what we now call the Great Commissions on the screen. Jesus came and told his disciples, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you. And be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. I think it's interesting, you saw it was 1889 when the Wesleyan Methodist Church sent the first missionaries to Sierra Leone. Those missionaries did not pack their belongings in trunks. They packed their belongings in coffins because they knew they wouldn't be coming back. I think that's interesting. They gave their life for the call, and but the promise at the very end, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Remember that Global Partners was developed so that churches can fulfill Acts 1:8. Well, here's Acts 1:8. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you to be my witnesses, telling people everywhere about me, in Jerusalem, throughout Judea and Samaria, and to the very ends of the earth. And so we are partners. We here at McCray Brook Wesleyan Church are partners with the Wesleyan Church and with our missionaries throughout the world to be witnesses here in Eldred, in McKean County, in Pennsylvania, in the United States, and throughout the world. We are commanded by Jesus to take the message of the cross, of the resurrection, to our community and county and around the world. And we are to take the message of salvation, that Jesus can save sinners, to everyone. Listen to what Paul writes to the church in Rome. If you openly declare that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is by believing in your heart that you are made right with God. It is by openly declaring your faith that you are saved. As the scriptures tell us, anyone who trusts in him will never be disgraced. Jew and Gentile are the same in this respect. They have the same Lord who generously gives to all who call upon him. For everyone who calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. But how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? How can they believe in him if they have never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? And that is why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of the messengers who bring the good news. And so Paul asks a series of 4 questions. Well, actually, first he says, call upon the Lord and you will be saved. But how can someone call upon the name of the Lord unless they believe? They have to believe first. And how can they believe if they've never heard the message? And how can they hear unless someone tells them? And so that is our part of doing that. Last week during the message on the Good Shepherd, that's kind of why I brought in that song, Reckless Love. We heard from Matthew's account of Jesus. Matthew 9, 36 to 38. And when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. And the question is for us, do we have compassion? When we see the crowds, when I think about tonight that of the students who will be showing up, at least if last couple of years is any indication, less than half of the students of the senior class of 2019 will show up at baccalaureate. There's 53 kids in the senior class this year. Think about it. That means there's 25 kids, at least 25 kids who have not made a decision for Christ. And so multiply that down through the grades. Think about it. How many kids do not know Jesus? That's why I said, God have mercy that we have not been faithful to preach the gospel to the youngest. So that's why we're having Vacation Bible School. But the good news, let me get back to that. He said to his disciples, the harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest. Ask him to send more workers into the field. So the Lord is looking for those who will tell the good news of the kingdom, that Jesus came to earth, that he dwelt among his people, that he died for their sin, that he rose again on the third day, and that he is coming back again, and he is looking to us. And part of the way that we do that is through Global Partners. Global Partners' quick tagline is amplifying the mission. You know, it's the missionary army. You say, well, why do we call it Global Partners? Well, many years ago, it used to be called the Wesleyan Missionary Society. You probably remember when it was called that. And then it was called Wesleyan World Missions. But about 15, 16 years ago, they changed the name to Global Partners. What's really kind of cool is places like Sierra Leone and Zambia, they are what we now call legacy mission fields. That's a good term, because that means what happens is we've done such a good job of equipping the national people in places like Sierra Leone and other mostly African countries and some in South America, that we've done such a good job of equipping the national people that they are now their own national churches, and they don't need missionaries anymore because the people are doing the work of an evangelist. So that's kind of cool. And so what we now are doing is so that's what I mean by Global Partners. We go equip the national church to share the gospel with people, and they do a great job. So we are now going to new places like Mongolia. Did you know that we now have Global Partners missionaries in Mongolia? Mindy Lowe is one of them. She's part of our district and was part of the Watermark Church. And what's really interesting about Mongolia is Mongolia is kind of susceptible, kind of suspicious of foreigners. But she's doing a great job there. And almost all of the pastors in Mongolia, those that Mindy is training up, are women. There are more women ordained in Mongolia for the Wesleyan Church than there are men. It's kind of interesting to see what's happening in Mongolia. But we also take the gospel and we send missionaries to where the gospel is restricted. Many of those are in what's called the 1040 window. Many of those have another religion as their major religion. Some of those, we believe it or not, we have missionaries in Muslim countries. We have missionaries in communist countries. I'm not going to tell you where they are and what they're doing there, but we have missionaries there. Currently, one of the families that we actually support, that our Faith Promise goes towards, is in a restricted country. If they were to be found out, they could easily be sent home. They might go to prison. And so sometimes what happens when we have missionaries in places that are restricted or that they're for security reasons, we can't tell where they are, we'll use a code name for where they are. And we might, well, if I look up Wikipedia, that doesn't show up anywhere because it's a code name. So that we can have them there. Sometimes, if you go to the Global Partners website, if they're in a restricted country, the only thing they'll do is put their first name there. So not even their last name shows up on the internet. But Faith Promise. So getting to Faith Promise. Faith Promise is the way of giving to world evangelism. You know, not all of us, I believe all of us are called to evangelize the lost, that we're all called to tell the gospel to those who are around us, but not all of us can go overseas. Well, guess what? Some ways, somehow we need to do that, and so we do that with our Faith Promise. And some of you may have never heard the term Faith Promise before. You may be like, what's Faith Promise? What's that all about? Well, in short, Faith Promise giving is a way to give to world evangelism and rather waiting to respond to individuals' appeals. Now, we do some of that with our monthly missions offerings, we are responding to individual appeals. But rather than wait for individual appeals, believers ask the Lord how much they should give to missions over the next year, and then they commit that annual total as a faith promise. And faith promise makes missions giving strategic rather than sporadic. One of the things that faith promise giving does is it gives us a way to be a channel of blessing, a way of handing on the blessing that God gives to us. Which I'm going to tell you a little story right now. And the next picture is a picture of the Chick-fil-A drive-thru. James just loved being on headset in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru, and I'm being very sarcastic there. But for some reason, James did such a great job, and they're always like, James, you can do headset. James was like, I don't want to do headset. I'm going to die there. But he was really good at it. I don't know. His young brain just let him go. But anyway, this isn't about being on drive-thru headset. But in drive-thru, there would be the person on headset who was taking the orders. There was the person on the cash register who would hand the orders out and take your money. And then there was the person bagging the orders. Well, what would happen from time to time is this young lady would say, as she was paying for her order, I want to pay for the order behind me. Well, for us, everybody thinks, well, that's a great idea, right? Well, when you start building them up, when you get 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, doing that in a row, 5, 6, 7, all of a sudden it starts, wait a second, and then we'd always hear from the kitchen, hey, wait a second, you forgot to bump that order. And I'm like, no, we didn't forget to bump that order. That person's in the next car behind us. So it always got confusing. But I thought it was always cool when you'd get 5, 6, 7, 8 in a row, that people would pay for the order behind them. They had been blessed by the very first car, and they would pass on the blessing to the next car, and the next car would pass on the blessing to the next car, and next car. It was always interesting if for some reason there was a big order. And you knew it because you could see the screens, and you knew what orders were coming up. They said, yeah, I want to pay for the order behind them. And they ended up with like a $50 bill, you know. It was always kind of interesting. But that's what pay it forward is. It's passing on the blessing that you have been given and passing it on to the next person. And really that's what faith promise is, because faith promise is money that we're saying, God, what blessing are you going to give me this year? What blessing are you going to give me this year that I can then say, I'm going to give it to global partners so that I can bless missionaries? That's really, we're paying it forward. We're saying, God, I want to give a blessing. When you give me a blessing, I want to pass it on and pay it forward. And so faith promise gives us, faith promise is giving over and above the tithe. It's not tithe and offerings. Those run the local church. They pay the electric bill. They pay the insurance. They pay the pastor's salary. That's what tithe and offerings do. But faith promise gives us a way to reach the unreached of the world and expresses our desire, expresses your desire to let the whole world know the good news. Some people may ask, was faith promise a pledge? No. You are not pledging money to the church. A pledge is a horizontal relationship. And if you gave us a pledge, somebody would be knocking on your door. Hey, Bonnie, you forgot to give your pledge. Well, faith promise doesn't work that way. Nobody's going to come and say, hey, Pam, you forgot to give your faith promise pledge. No, that's not the way faith promise works. Faith promise is a vertical relationship between you and God. No one will know what you are planning on giving. No one will check up on you. And therefore, no one will notify you when you miss a payment. Isn't that kind of cool? Except God. But God's a better collection agent than any of us. So a few moments ago, I quoted Paul's writings to the Romans. But Paul is actually quoting from the prophet Isaiah there at the end when it says, how beautiful. And I love this. I came across this version, the International Children's Bible. And I thought how appropriate it is for us who live here in the mountains of Pennsylvania. How beautiful it is for the person who comes over the mountains to bring the good news. How beautiful is the one who announces peace. He brings good news and announces salvation. How beautiful are the feet of the one who says to Jerusalem, your God is King. So that's my challenge. You have your faith promise cards. And so what we'll do is I'm going to sing a song. So if you haven't had a chance to fill out your faith promise card, you'll have an opportunity to do it while I sing. But God is calling us to participate globally in the act of sharing the good news. We might not be able to go there, but we have an opportunity to promise our support to those who are already there ministering in faraway lands. And in so doing, we can say, I will follow. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Whom you tell me to serve, I will serve.